Good evening, students. This is the third video of the chapter Biological Classification, and in this video we will learn about the kingdom fungi. Okay, this is the slide for the various characteristics of kingdom fungi. So, the very first point is there are two types of fungi, positive and negative. That means fungi can be divided into two types. The first type is known as positive fungi and the second type is known as negative fungi. Positive fungi are very helpful in food, alcohol, bread, antibiotics. So, the positive fungi are the fungi which helps in the production of food, alcohol, bread, antibiotics, etc. Negative, present as parasites. That means the negative fungi are present as parasites on other animals or plants. In animals, they cause ringworms. So the fungi, some fungi, if present in animals, they cause ringworms, and if they present in plants, they destroy wheats, rice, mustard, etc. So the next point is heterotrophic organisms. That means the fungi, the organisms present in fungi are heterotrophic. That means they cannot prepare their own food by themselves. They have to depend on other organisms for their food. Mostly multicellular. That means fungi are made up of many cells. But there is an exception, that is the fungi yeast are unicellular. That means exception in yeast, unicellular fungi. That means yeast is a unicellular fungi. Yeast is made up of only one cell. Wheat rust causing Puccinia is an important example of fungi. Puccinia is a disease which is caused in the wheat plant's leaf. There occurs rusting. Wheat rust means rust is something reddish in color that appears in the leaves of the wheat, and this disease is called Puccinia, and this is caused by fungi. This disease is caused by fungi. They prefer to be warm and humid places. Fungi prefer to live in warm and humid places. Humid means the places where there is water vapor in the atmosphere. So fungi prefer such places where there is presence of water vapor in the atmosphere and the place is warm. Okay. The next point is fungi are filamentous with the exception of yeast. So all the fungi are filamentous. That means they possess filaments in their structure, in their body. But the fungi yeast, which is unicellular, this is an exception here, and this yeast does not contain any filaments in their body. Okay. Their bodies consist of long, slender, thread-like structure called hyphae. So single long, slender thread is known as hyphae, and it is present in the bodies of the fungi. The network of hyphae is known as mycelium. So when the single long thread-like structure called hyphae are collected together, when there is the accumulation of hyphae, it is known as mycelium. Hyphae are of two types, septate hyphae and the second is cenocytic hyphae. So what is septate hyphae now? Septate consists of one nucleus, whereas cenocytic is multinucleated. That means septate hyphae consists only one nucleus, but cenocytic hyphae contains multinucleus. That means more than one nucleus in their body. This multinucleus means continuous tube filled with multinucleated cytoplasm. Okay, the whole tube is filled with multinucleated cytoplasm means cytoplasm was with many nucleus, and that type of hyphae is known as synocytic hyphae. The next point is the cell wall of fungi is made up of chitin and polysaccharides. Okay, the composition of cell wall of fungi may be asked, and the cell wall of fungi is made up of what? Chitin and polysaccharides. It is important. Most fungi are heterotrophic and absorb soluble organic matter from dead substrates and hence called saprophytes. So, most of the fungi are saprophytes. And what is the meaning of saprophytes? This saprophytic fungi absorb soluble organic matter from dead substrate. Okay, this type of fungi which are known as saprophytes, what they do? They absorb organic matter from dead substrates as their food. Okay. The next slide is some depend on living plants and animals known as parasites. So, what does the sum indicates here? Sum means some fungi depend on living plants and animals. They depend on plants and animals, and that type of fungi which depend on various other living plants and animals, or this type of fungi which lives on or survive on other plants and animals are known as parasites. They can also live as symbionts in association with algae as lichens. So, this is a very important point, this one. So, there is a combination of fungi with algae. That means there is an association of algae with fungi, and this association is known as lichen, and this is a symbiotic association. That means here both the algae and the fungi which are in close association are benefited. They are also present in roots of higher plants called mycorrhiza. That means some fungi are also present in the roots of higher plants, and this association of fungi with roots of higher plants is known as mycorrhiza. Reproduction may be vegetative, asexual or sexual means. That means fungi can reproduce their young ones, or fungi can reproduce their forms by three modes. That is, the first is vegetative, there may be asexual reproduction, or there may be sexual reproduction. And vegetative reproduction means vegetative reproduction includes fragmentation, fission and budding. Asexual reproduction by spores. Asexual reproduction occurs by the formation of spores, and these spores are known as conidia or sporangiophores or zoospores. And sexual reproduction, oospores, ascospores and basidiospores. And during the sexual reproduction of fungi, three types of spores are formed. They are oospores, ascospores and basidiospores. The various spores are produced in distinct structures called fruiting bodies, and where these spores are produced, where these spores are formed, there is a structure called fruiting bodies, and in these fruiting bodies these spores are formed. Sexual cycle involves, these are the three process by which sexual reproduction takes place in fungi. The first is fusion of protoplasm between two motile or non-motile gametes called plasmogamy. And the first process is plasmogamy. Here what happens? Fusion of protoplasm between two motile or non-motile gametes. If there are two motile gametes, or suppose there are two non-motile gametes, okay, there will be the fusion of protoplasm between these two gametes. That means these two gametes will come close and their protoplasm will fuse to each other, and this process is known as plasmogamy. The second is fusion of nuclei called karyogamy. After the first process, that is after the plasmogamy is conducted, the next is karyogamy. That means after the fusion of protoplasm, now the nucleus comes closer and this nuclei got fused. This is known as karyogamy. Okay, the third is meiosis in zygote resulting in haploid spores. Okay, that is meiosis in zygote result in haploid spores. That means when there is meiosis cell division in the zygote, it results in the formation of haploid spores. Okay. The next point is in some fungi there is a stage called dikaryotic stage. There is a presence of 2 nuclei per cell. Such condition is called dikaryon and phase is called dikaryophase. Example, ascomycetes and basidiomycetes. Okay. So in some fungi a stage called dikaryotic stage occurs, and in this very stage there is a presence of 2 nuclei per cell. There will be presence of 2 nuclei in one cell. There will be 2 nuclei, and such condition is called dikaryon. Karyon means nucleus, di means 2, so it is known as dikaryon, and phase is called dikaryophase. And this phase where there is the presence of 2 nuclei per cell occurs, this is known as dikaryophase. Example of such fungi where dikaryotic stage is found are ascomycetes and basidiomycetes. Okay, the next is on the basis of morphology of the mycelium, mode of spore formation and fruiting bodies, the following are the various classes of the kingdom fungi. So on the basis of the morphology, that means the external structure of the mycelium and the mode of spore formation and fruiting bodies, fungi can be further classified into various classes. These classes are Phycomycetes, Ascomycetes, Basidiomycetes and Deuteromycetes. These are the 4 classes of fungi on the basis of the structure of external structure of morphology and mode of spore formation and fruiting bodies. Okay. Now we'll go to the next slide. In this slide, we'll come across the various characteristics of the various classes of fungi. The first is Phycomycetes. Okay. So they are aquatic habitats. That means they live in water. Phycomycetes are the fungi which resides in water. Mycelium, aseptate and cenocytic. That means mycelium may be aseptate or it may also be cenocytic. Asexual reproduction, zoospores motile or by aplanospores non-motile. So how does the asexual reproduction in Phycomycetes takes place? It takes place by the formation of zoospores when the fungi are motile, and if the fungi are non-motile, then there will be the formation of aplanospores. The spores are endogenously produced in sporangium. Endogenously means inside the sporangium. These zoospores and aplanospores are produced in sporangium. That means endogenously means inside the sporangium. A zoospore is formed by fusion of 2 gametes. How does a zoospore form? A zoospore is formed by the fusion of when 2 gametes fuse together. Okay. Gametes similar in morphology and are termed as anisogamous or oogamous. Example, mucor, rhizopus, albugo. What are the examples? Mucor, rhizopus and albugo. Gametes similar in morphology means gametes which are similar in external structure. They are known as isogamous, and dissimilar are termed as anisogamous or oogamous, or and the gametes which are dissimilar in structure. That means when we suppose when we see two gametes and these are not similar in their external structures, then they are known as anisogamous, or they may also be termed as oogametes. Example are mucor, rhizopus, albugo, etc. These are the examples of the fungi, that is the Phycomycetes, that is first class of fungi. The second class is Ascomycetes, commonly known as sac fungi. These Ascomycetes are commonly known as sac fungi, mostly multicellular. Example, Penicillium. Penicillium is an Ascomycetes which is multicellular, and mostly, that means most of the Ascomycetes are multicellular. They are rarely unicellular. So unicellular Ascomycetes, here yeast is an example. Rarely unicellular, example yeast. Okay. Saprophytic, the next one is saprophytic, decomposers, parasites or coprophilous, growing on dung. Ascomycetes are the fungi which are saprophytic. That means they depend on other dead organisms. Okay. The next is decomposers. They decompose the dead organic matters. Parasitic, that live on other animals or plants for their survival, for their benefit or for their food. Or coprophilous, this is a very important time. Coprophilous means growing on dung. This type of fungi grows on where? Dung. Okay. It is present on dung to get its essential nutrients. Okay. The next is mycelium, branched and septate. Mycelium is branched and septate. Asexual spores are conidia. Here the asexual spores are known as conidia. Conidia are produced exogenously on a special mycelium called conidiospores. Exogenous means outside. Here, where does the conidia form? Conidia are formed exogenously on a special mycelium called conidiospores. They are formed in conidiospores, which are special mycelium in their outside of the conidiospores. Conidia on germination produce mycelium. Okay. On germination, conidia produce mycelium. Sexual spores called ascospores. Sexual spores in this class of fungi, that is Ascomycetes, are called ascospores. Ascospores are produced endogenously in sac-like asci, singular ascus. Okay. So these ascospores, where they are produced? They are produced endogenously in sac-like asci, in a sac-like structure. This sac-like structure is asci. They are produced in the inside of this sac-like structure asci. So this class of fungi, as there is a presence of sac-like structure known as asci, as it is sac-like, they are known as sac fungi. These types of fruiting bodies called ascocarps. Example, aspergillus, claviceps and neurospora. Okay. Neurospora is used extensively in biochemical and genetic work. Neurospora, aspergillus and claviceps are the example of Ascomycetes, and they are very helpful in biochemical and genetic work. Example, moras and truffles are edible. Moras and truffles are ascomycetes which are edible. That means we can eat the fungi, moras and truffles. The third class of fungi is basidiomycetes. Bracket fungi or puffballs. They are also known as bracket fungi or puffballs. Example, mushroom. So, mushroom, we all know what is mushroom. I think you all have seen mushrooms. So, mushrooms are nothing but they are basidiomycetes. They are also known as bracket fungi or puffballs. Mushrooms are fungi. Parasitic basidiomycetes are known as rust and smuts. There are various parasitic basidiomycetes and these parasitic basidiomycetes are known as rust and smuts. Mycelium, branched and septate. Here mycelium are branched and septate. Asexual spores not found. Asexual spores are not found in this type of fungi. Vegetative reproduction, fragmentation. Vegetative reproduction occurs by the process of fragmentation. The sex organs are absent. Okay. Plasmogamy is brought about by fusion of two vegetative or somatic cells of different strains or genotypes. Here plasmogamy, that is the fusion of the protoplasm, is brought about the fusion of two vegetative or somatic cells. Here in this case two vegetative cells may come together to fuse their protoplasm or two somatic cells may come together to fuse their protoplasm. The resultant structure is dikaryotic which ultimately gives rise to basidium, and after the fusion the resultant structure is dikaryotic, that means presence of two nuclei which ultimately gives rise to, and this structure is known as basidium, which gives rise to basidium. Okay. Karyogamy and meiosis take place in the basidium producing 4 basidiophase. Karyogamy means fusion of nucleus and meiosis, after karyogamy there is the it follows meiosis, and that is taken place in basidium producing 4 basidiophores. Okay. The basidiophores are exogenously in fruiting bodies called basidiocarps, and these particular basidiophores are exogenously present, that means they are present in the fruiting bodies called basidiophores. Exogenously means outside the basidiocarps, outside the fruiting bodies which are known as basidiocarps. Example, agaricus, mushroom, Astilago, smut, and Puccinia, rust fungus. Okay. The last type of fungi is deuteromycetes. They are commonly known as imperfect fungi. Why they are known as imperfect fungi? Because why they are known as imperfect fungi? Because here sexual reproduction is not found. Okay, so now they are known as imperfect. Only the asexual or vegetative phases of these fungi are known. So this deuteromycetes, there occurs only asexual or vegetative reproduction. Asexual spores are known as conidia, and here mycelium, there is a presence of mycelium, and these mycelium are septate and branched. And the last point is saprophytes or parasites, decomposers of litter, and help in mineral cycling. These deuteromycetes helps in mineral cycling. They are saprophytic or parasitic, and they are also decomposers. Example of deuteromycetes are Alternaria, Coletotrichum, and Trichoderma. Okay. So this is all about the kingdom fungi. In the next video, we will learn about the kingdom Animalia and kingdom Plantae, and I think we will finish this chapter in the next video. Thank you for watching this video.